I'm Peter. I came to the UK from Zimbabwe, then Rhodesia, in 1975 to study medicine. And on arrival, I was adopted by Caroline's sister, who made sure I became a Christian, and then by Caroline, who became my fellow ex-Rhodesian, friend, parish visitor, and then my wife. I worked in the NHS as a consultant and gastroenterologist for 32 years.
Hi, I'm Caroline. I also grew up in Zimbabwe, where I became a Christian in my final year at school, and then also came to England, where I met Peter. I have been a full-time mother and then a nurse and a midwife, and after the children left home, I became a geologist and had a short career in exploration. We have 3 lovely children who are all married and 5 grandchildren.
In exploring our call, we initially went on a mission to Mozambique, but my poor ability to learn languages made it clear I could not teach medicine in Portuguese, which ruled out both Angola and Mozambique. And because we had roots in Zimbabwe, this seemed the obvious choice. However, after several years of visiting and trying to go to Zimbabwe, we eventually reached a road closed sign when the president refused to grant our visa application. Within weeks, we were in contact with someone who introduced me to the head of Department of Medicine in Blantyre, and she wanted me to come the next week and would sort out all the formalities like visas later.
We're passionate believers in the local church as the people that God brings together to make his love known in our broken world, and that somehow he manages to do this with us despite all our flaws and weaknesses. So we felt that our call was simply to just go and be, and to belong to a church and be part of it, and just hopefully to encourage it.
As we were going to be self-funding with an NHS pension and a local salary, we were not looking for financial support from a mission agency, and we applied to be mission associates with the Church Mission Society. We warmed to the friendly ethos of CMS as a missional community who offered to pray for us, enabled us to get health insurance at advantageous rate, and offered an annual conference in the UK and in Africa.
Stats on Malawi will show you that Malawi is one of the poorest countries in the world, with currently 37% of the under 5s experiencing stunted growth due to malnutrition, and this will only increase with the ravages of COVID. Economic poverty is what grabs your attention when you first arrive, and it can be really overwhelming for us. However, we failed to see until a few years in how rich Malawi really is. The culture is warm and welcoming, and people matter. The church is vibrant, alive, and exploding in growth. And what we learnt from the Christians that we met there has really changed us.
I thought I was going to train endoscopists, and I certainly did this, but a much more significant part of my job was teaching medical students, junior doctors, and sharing knowledge with fellow consultants. The teaching was mostly bedside and caring for patients who were jam-packed into the wards. Resources were severely limited, with very few tests or drugs available, and we had to practice very old-fashioned style of medicine. COVID presented a major challenge in the hospital, initially to overcome the extreme anxiety of the medical and nursing staff and getting used to using PPE routinely while waiting for the vaccine. Sadly, when it arrived through the COVAX collaborative, many Malawians, including some medical staff, refused the vaccine as they believe it is part of a dangerous conspiracy by the West to harm them.
Initially, I taught earth science, and I loved sharing my passion with the students who were keen to learn. I particularly enjoyed taking them out into the field because the cost of transport and their struggles make it almost impossible for them to do this on their own. Sadly, I never got the correct visa, and so after a couple of years I had to leave that job. and found other things to do. We were normal people living very normal lives and got involved in a whole variety of things whilst we were there. And we'd like to share 3 of those things with you now. We got involved with Alpha initially through our church and loved seeing how accessible it was to people in different circumstances. In the same group, we could have somebody living a hand-to-mouth day-to-day existence alongside somebody else who had a job, a regular income and a house. And yet both of these people could share together what their experiences were and be introduced to Jesus. Over the years, I became involved with a number of leaders who were interested in running Alpha, and they have become the core of the Alpha Malawi team. They are providing training for people that want to run Alpha, and they now have all the materials translated into the language Chichewa. One of these leaders that we met was James Moto and his wife Atilia. They're passionate about Alpha and run courses repeatedly. They're serial church planters, and although they're only in their 40s and have 2 young girls, they have already planted 3 churches.
Severe flooding after a cyclone in 2015 brought us in contact with a remarkable man called Pastor Kadioli and his Titandizani, which means we help each other, concept of caring for orphans, the elderly and other vulnerable people by the church community taking them into their homes, not into orphanages. Their resources of rice and maize fields had been destroyed by the flood, and we helped initially with food relief so that they could get back on their feet. This led to an ongoing relationship of support, including school fees and uniforms. From the time we first met Kadioli, we were asking God to provide a local organisation who would be able to offer long-term support. A year before we left, God brought us in contact with a remarkable man called Stephen, himself initially a street kid and orphan, who is the Malawian lead for an organisation called Forgotten Voices International. And to our great joy, in answer to our prayer, they have agreed to take on the nurture of Titandizani.
I became involved in leading a small charity called the Chira Fund, which operates in the hospital where Peter was working. The government budget does cover the costs of staff salaries, but there's very little money left for any other necessities. You may not always recognise the vital role that toilet paper plays in your life, but if it's absent, other things will be used by people. So rags and stones, which can be used in the village in a pit latrine, are okay there, but in a ward-based sewage system, which runs on water, they don't work. So one of Chira Fund's regular budget lines is to provide toilet paper for large parts of the hospital. And this small act has significantly reduced the number of blocked sewers that occur on the wards, which has significantly improved the lives of the patients and the staff.
This all sounds very wonderful and busy, but we want to make it clear that we had plenty of time to enjoy life, make lovely friends and go on spectacular holidays at the lake and especially at the 2 game reserves within a few hours of our house, relaxing, climbing mountains and enjoying the natural world. I have learnt to slow down after a very busy career in the NHS and to depend more on the Lord. I dealt with an enormous number of people with esophageal cancer, for which we could do very little, and I've learnt to pray more for my patients and trust them to His care. I've also learnt to take more interest in the people we meet. In the UK, you might just say good morning to a stranger, but in Malawi, you say Modi, good morning, Mulibwanji, how are you? Kunyumba Ulibwanji, how is your home? We also learnt more about some of the contemplative approaches to the spiritual life and are committed to praying and reading the Bible and saying the Lord's Prayer in Chichewa together, using such apps as Bible 1 Year, Common Prayer for Ordinary Radicals, Pray As You Go and Lectio 365.
we were really sad to leave the many wonderful friends that we had made in Malawi, but it was time to come home, to be more connected grandparents and to reconnect with our family. The faith of those that we met there has been humbling, and we have learnt so much from them. They have taught us in ways we did not know before that God is real, He is Lord, and He is sovereign in all things. We all know that in our heads, but to actually see it in action in the lives of people whose lives have been totally transformed by Jesus has been eye-opening for us.